I am sitting in my downtown apartment, staring out at the city lights. My phone still warm in my hand from a conversation I never expected to have. 12 years. 12 years of silence broken by my mother's voice, casual and expectant, as if no time had passed at all. As if the night they threw me out at 16 was just a minor misunderstanding. The irony is not lost on me that they are calling now when I have everything they wish they had, asking for help from the daughter they discarded like yesterday's trash. Before I dive into this story that changed my entire life, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if you have ever felt like the black sheep in your family, and do not forget to subscribe because trust me, you will not believe how this unfolds. Growing up, Helena and I were supposed to be two halves of the same whole. We shared a face, a birthday, and a bedroom, but that is where the similarities ended. Helena was the golden child 3 minutes older and never letting anyone forget it. She had this way of lighting up a room that made everyone gravitate toward her, including our parents. Her laugh was musical, her smile infectious, and her tears could melt the hardest heart in seconds. I was the responsible one, the quiet twin who cleaned up messes and followed rules. While Helena charmed her way out of trouble, I was the one our parents turned to when something went wrong. "Lana, why did you not stop her?" became the household anthem. When Helena skipped school, it was my fault for not reminding her about the test. When she came home past curfew, I should have called to check on her. Somehow her choices always became my responsibility. Our house was a modest 2-story in suburban Ohio, where Dad worked at the auto plant and Mom managed a small accounting firm. Money was always tight, but there was enough love to go around, or so I thought. Family dinners were Helena's stage, where she would regale us with stories about her day, her friends, her dreams of becoming an actress. I learned early that my role was to listen, to applaud, to fade into the background while she shone. Helena dated early and often. Boys were drawn to her like moths to a flame, and she loved the attention. By 15, she was sneaking out regularly to meet Tyler Morrison, a 17-year-old with a motorcycle and a reputation that made our parents nervous. But Helena always knew exactly what to say to calm their fears, batting her eyelashes and promising to be careful. I tried to warn her about Tyler. There were rumors at school about his temper, about girls he had used and discarded. But Helena was convinced she was different, that she could change him. She wore his Letterman jacket like a trophy and spoke about their future together with the certainty of someone who had never faced real disappointment. The night everything changed started like any other. Helena had been quieter than usual for weeks, declining family dinners and spending hours locked in our bathroom. When she finally called us all into the living room, her face was pale but determined. She looked at each of us before dropping the bomb that would shatter our family forever. "I am pregnant," she announced, her voice barely above a whisper. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad went white as a sheet. Mom gasped and covered her mouth, and I felt the world tilt on its axis. Helena immediately began to cry, not the manipulative tears I had seen her use before, but genuine scared sobs that made her seem younger than 16. "How far along?" Mom asked, her voice shaky. 3 months, Helena whispered. "Tyler and I, we love each other. We want to keep the baby." What followed was chaos. Dad started yelling about responsibility and Tyler's family. Mom alternated between comforting Helena and demanding answers about how this could have happened. Through it all, Helena painted herself as the victim of circumstances beyond her control, a young girl swept away by love. But then came the moment that changed my life forever. Through her tears, Helena looked directly at me and said the words that would haunt me for years. "Lana knew. She should have stopped me. She should have told you guys what was happening." The room went silent again, but this time all eyes were on me. I felt like I was drowning desperately, trying to understand how my sister's pregnancy had become my fault. What, Helena? I started, but she cut me off. "You knew Tyler was bad news. You knew we were getting serious. You could have said something, but you just let it happen because you were jealous." Her tears came harder now, and I watched in horror as our parents' expression shifted from confusion to accusation. "Is this true?" Dad asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "No. I mean, yes. I knew she was dating Tyler, but everyone knew that. I never knew they were—" I gestured helplessly, unable to finish the sentence. "I am not responsible for Helena's choices." But the damage was done. In Helena's version of events, I was the older sister figure who had failed in my duty to protect her. Never mind that we were the same age, never mind that Helena had always been the leader in our relationship. Suddenly, I was the villain in her story, and our parents were buying every word. Over the next few weeks, I became the family scapegoat. Every conversation about Helena's pregnancy somehow circled back to my failures as a sister. I should have been watching out for her. I should have seen the signs. I should have prevented this disaster from happening. The more I protested my innocence, the more they insisted I was being selfish and refusing to take responsibility. Helena leaned into her victim role with Oscar-worthy performance. She was just a scared girl who had been failed by everyone around her, especially her twin sister, who was supposed to have her back. Tyler, conveniently, was painted as the manipulative older boy who had taken advantage of her innocence. Our parents ate it up, desperate to believe that their golden daughter was not at fault. I watched my family close ranks around Helena while pushing me further and further to the margins. Dinner conversations happened around me, not with me. Family decisions were made without my input. I became a stranger in my own home, blamed for a situation I had no control over and no part in creating. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday in March. I had just gotten home from school when I found Helena sobbing on the couch, surrounded by our parents. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes and delivered the final blow. "I cannot handle this stress anymore," she said, her voice breaking. "Having Lana here constantly judging me and blaming me for ruining the family, it is not good for the baby. The doctor says stress can cause complications." Mom immediately turned to me with fire in her eyes. "Is this true? Have you been making your sister feel guilty about her condition?" "Condition!" I repeated incredulously. "She is pregnant, not sick. And no, I have barely spoken to any of you in weeks because you all act like I am some kind of criminal." "Do not raise your voice to your mother," Dad warned, stepping between us. Helena's sobs grew louder. "See, this is exactly what I am talking about. She is so angry and resentful. I just need peace right now for the baby's sake." Our parents exchanged a look that filled me with dread. When Mom turned back to me, her expression was cold and final. "You need to apologize to your sister and commit to being supportive, or you need to find somewhere else to stay." The ultimatum hung in the air like a poison cloud. They were asking me to take responsibility for Helena's choices, to enable her victim complex, and to pretend that her pregnancy was somehow my fault. I looked at each of them, hoping to see some flicker of the parents who had raised me, who had supposedly loved me unconditionally. "I will not apologize for something I did not do," I said quietly. "Then pack your things," Dad said without hesitation. "You have 2 hours." The first night was the hardest. I sat in my friend Angela's basement bedroom, clutching a duffel bag that contained everything I owned, trying to process what had just happened. My family had chosen Helena's narrative over the truth, chosen her comfort over my basic right to exist in our home. At 16, I was suddenly homeless, penniless, and completely on my own. Angela's parents, bless them, let me stay for 2 weeks while I figured out my next move. They offered to call my parents to try to mediate, but I knew it was hopeless. My family had made their choice, and I was not part of their equation anymore. The first job I found was at Danny's Diner, a greasy spoon downtown that smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. The manager, a tired woman named Ruth, took one look at my desperate face and offered me 40 hours a week washing dishes and bussing tables for minimum wage. It was not glamorous, but it was survival. I dropped out of high school the next week. It broke my heart to walk away from my education, from the college plans I had been nurturing, but I needed every available hour to work. Education was a luxury I could no longer afford when I was worried about where my next meal would come from. The studio apartment I eventually found was barely larger than my childhood bedroom, but it was mine. The rent ate up most of my paycheck, leaving me with just enough for ramen noodles and generic peanut butter. I learned to ignore the rumbling in my stomach to make one jar of peanut butter last 2 weeks, to see a full belly as a weekend luxury. But something unexpected happened during those brutal early months. The more I was forced to rely on myself, the stronger I became. Every small victory, from making rent to getting a second job at a retail store, built my confidence. I was not just surviving, I was proving to myself that I could handle whatever life threw at me. The turning point came when I got a weekend job with a catering company. The owner, Marcus, was a former restaurant manager who had started his own business after getting laid off. He saw something in me that I had not seen in myself potential. "You have got good instincts," he told me after my first event, a wedding reception, where I had noticed and fixed several problems before they became disasters. "Ever think about management?" The idea had never occurred to me. Management was for people with college degrees and family connections, not high school dropouts living paycheck to paycheck. But Marcus planted a seed that would eventually grow into something beautiful. He encouraged me to get my GED, even offering to pay for the test prep materials. While other kids my age were going to prom and planning graduation parties, I was studying algebra at midnight after 12-hour workdays. The test was brutal, but when I passed on my first try, I felt like I could conquer the world. Marcus helped me apply for community college, steering me toward business management courses, and even writing a letter of recommendation that brought tears to my eyes. He talked about my work ethic, my natural leadership abilities, and my determination to overcome obstacles that would have broken most people. The scholarship I received was partial, covering tuition, but not books or living expenses. I continued working my multiple jobs, sometimes falling asleep over textbooks at 3 in the morning, but my grades never suffered. Every A was a victory over the family who had counted me out, proof that I was worth more than they had ever realized. Transferring to a 4-year university felt impossible until Marcus connected me with his old boss, who had become a professor in the business school. Professor Williams looked at my transcripts, my work history, and my letters of recommendation, and somehow found funding for my final 2 years. I graduated magna cum laude with a degree in business management and a job offer from a marketing firm downtown. The day I walked across that stage, I thought about my family for the first time in months. I wondered if Helena had finished high school, if the baby was healthy, if our parents ever regretted their choice. But mostly, I felt proud of the woman I had become without them. At 28, my life bears no resemblance to the scared 16-year-old who was thrown out of her home with nothing but a duffel bag and wounded pride. I am the senior marketing director at a Fortune 500 company, overseeing campaigns that reach millions of people. My downtown apartment is everything I dreamed of during those early years: floor-to-ceiling windows, modern appliances, and most importantly, security that no one can take away from me. David and I have been together for 3 years, engaged for 6 months. He is everything my younger self never dared to hope for: kind, supportive, successful in his own right, and completely uninterested in the drama that once defined my family life. We met at a charity fundraiser for homeless youth, a cause that has become central to my identity. He knew my story before we ever went on a first date, and his respect for my journey made me fall for him before I even realized it was happening. Our wedding is planned for next summer, a small ceremony followed by a reception that will be everything my teenage self dreamed of, but never expected to have. The guest list includes friends I have chosen, colleagues who have become family, and Marcus, who will walk me down the aisle in place of the father who chose to walk away. I learned about Helena's struggles through mutual friends and social media posts I probably should not have looked at. Tyler left when their son Danny was 3 years old, disappearing one day and never returning. Helena never finished high school, instead cycling through a series of dead-end jobs and failed relationships. Each new boyfriend was going to be the one to save her, to provide the stability she craved, but they always left when they realized she was looking for a father for her son rather than a genuine partner. Danny, now 12, seemed like a sweet kid from the few photos I had seen. He had Helena's dark hair, but thankfully lacked her manipulative streak, at least from what I could tell. My heart broke for him, caught in the middle of his mother's chaos through no fault of his own. Our parents had struggled financially for years. Dad's plant had downsized, and Mom's accounting firm had lost several major clients to larger competitors. The family business they had started in their 50s, a small catering service, had failed within 2 years. The house I grew up in was now in foreclosure proceedings, a fact I learned through public records rather than family communication. For 12 years, there had been complete silence. No birthday calls, no holiday cards, no acknowledgement that I existed. I had built a life fallen in love, achieved success beyond my wildest dreams, and they had missed all of it. In quiet moments, I sometimes wondered if they thought about me, if they regretted their choice, if they were proud of what I had accomplished. But mostly, I had made peace with their absence. That peace was shattered by my mother's phone call on a Tuesday evening in October. "Lana, it's Mom." Her voice sounded older, frailer than I remembered, but the casual tone suggested she was calling to discuss weekend plans rather than breaking 12 years of silence. "Mom." I could not keep the shock out of my voice. How did you get this number? Does it matter I am calling because we need to talk?" No apology. No acknowledgement of the years of silence. No recognition that maybe she owed me an explanation for abandoning her daughter. Just a simple statement that she needed something from me. She continued when I did not respond, "are going through a difficult time. Helena is not well, and Danny needs stability for school. Your father and I are not as young as we used to be, and frankly, we could use some family support." The word family hit me like a physical blow. For 12 years, I had not been family. I had been an inconvenience, a scapegoat, a problem to be eliminated. But now that they needed something, suddenly, I was family again. "What exactly are you asking me?" I managed to say. "Well, you have done well for yourself, have you not? That big apartment downtown, the fancy job. We were thinking it might be nice for all of us to spend some time together. Helena and Danny could stay with you for a while, just until we get back on our feet." The audacity took my breath away. They wanted to move into my home, the sanctuary I had built from nothing, as if the past 12 years had never happened. As if I owed them shelter after they had denied it to me when I needed it most. "I need some time to think about this," I said finally. "Of course, dear. But do not take too long. Helena's health is not good, and Danny really needs a stable environment." After she hung up, I sat in stunned silence for an hour. David found me there when he got home from work, staring at my phone as if it might explode. When I told him about the call, his reaction was everything I needed to hear. "You do not owe them anything," he said firmly. "Blood relation does not erase 12 years of abandonment." But despite his support, despite my anger, I found myself agreeing to meet them. Maybe it was curiosity about how they would justify their behavior. Maybe it was some lingering hope that they had realized their mistake and were ready to apologize. Or maybe I just needed to face them one more time to truly close that chapter of my life. The coffee shop where we met was neutral territory, a busy Starbucks downtown where their manipulation tactics would be limited by public scrutiny. I arrived early, choosing a table near the window where I could watch them approach. My hands were shaking slightly as I sipped my latte, 12 years of suppressed emotions, threatening to overwhelm my carefully constructed composure. Mom arrived first, and the years had not been kind to her. Her hair was completely gray now, her face lined with worry and disappointment. She moved slowly, as if every step was an effort, and when she spotted me, her smile seemed forced and uncertain. Helena came next, and the change in her was even more dramatic. The vibrant, beautiful girl who had once commanded every room was gone, replaced by a tired woman who looked older than her 28 years. Her clothes were clean but worn, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her eyes held a weariness that spoke of too many disappointments. Danny walked beside her, a quiet 12-year-old who seemed uncomfortable with the situation. He had grown tall and lanky, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and his mother's brown eyes. But where Helena's eyes held manipulation and expectation, His held only uncertainty and a maturity that no child should have to carry. Dad was the last to arrive, looking around the coffee shop, as if he expected to find enemies lurking behind every table. His hair was white now, his shoulders stooped, and when he finally sat down across from me, I could see that the confident man who had once thrown me out of our home was gone forever. "You look good," Mom said, breaking the awkward silence. "Successful." "Thank you," I replied carefully, not ready to make this easy for any of them. Helena shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable with the scrutiny. "Lana, I know this might be awkward, but we are family. We should be able to help each other out when times get tough." The assumption in her words was staggering. After 12 years of treating me like I did not exist, she expected to walk back into my life and immediately start making demands. But I had learned patience in the years since leaving home, so I simply nodded and waited for her to continue. "The thing is," she said, glancing at our parents for support, "I have been having some health issues lately. Nothing serious, but it makes working difficult. And Danny really needs a stable environment for school. His grades have been suffering with all the moving around we have had to do." "What kind of health issues?" I asked directly. Helena's eyes darted away. "Just stress-related things. You know how it is?" But I did not know because she was being deliberately vague. In my experience, people who were genuinely ill did not have trouble explaining their condition. People who were looking for sympathy, however, often kept things mysterious. "The foreclosure on the house has been really hard on all of us," Dad added, speaking for the first time. "We lost the catering business last year, and my pension is not enough to cover everything." Mom jumped in quickly. "We thought maybe Helena and Danny could stay with you for a few months just until we figure something out. You have that big apartment, and it would be so good for Danny to be in a stable school district." There it was. The ask I had been expecting since Mom's phone call. They wanted to move into my home, my sanctuary, the place I had built through years of sacrifice and determination. They wanted me to support them financially and emotionally after they had thrown me away like garbage when I was the one who needed support. "And what about an apology?" I asked quietly. The table went silent. Helena looked confused, as if she could not imagine what I might want an apology for. Mom and Dad exchanged glances, clearly hoping this topic would not come up. "Lana," Mom said finally, "we were all under a lot of stress back then. Maybe we all said and did things we regret." "Maybe?" I repeated. "You threw me out of my home at 16 because Helena got pregnant and decided it was my fault. You chose her lie over my truth, and you made me homeless because it was easier than holding her accountable for her own choices." "Now wait just a minute," Dad said, his old defensiveness flaring. "Helena was pregnant and scared. She needed her family's support." "And what did I need?" I asked. "What does a 16-year-old girl need when her family turns on her?" Helena finally spoke up, but her words proved that nothing had changed. "Lana, I know you are still upset about that, but you have to understand how difficult that time was for me. I was just a kid making mistakes." "We were the same age," I said firmly. "The same age, but somehow your mistakes became my responsibility." The conversation continued for another hour, but the pattern was clear. They wanted my help, my money, my home, but they were not willing to acknowledge the pain they had caused me. Every attempt I made to address the past was met with deflection, justification, or outright denial. Helena tried tears, the same manipulation tactic that had worked so well when we were children. Mom attempted guilt, talking about family obligations and Christian forgiveness. Dad grew increasingly angry, suggesting that my success had made me selfish and ungrateful. But 12 years of independence had taught me something valuable. I did not need their approval anymore. I did not need their love or their acceptance to validate my worth. I had built a life without them, surrounded myself with people who valued me for who I was, rather than what I could provide. When Helena finally asked directly if they could move in with me, I looked around the table at these people who shared my DNA, but had forfeited any claim to my loyalty long ago. "No," I said simply. The word hung in the air like a slap. Helena's mouth fell open. Mom gasped, and Dad's face turned red with indignation. "What do you mean, no?" Helena demanded. "I am your sister." "You were my sister," I corrected. "But sisters do not abandon each other when things get difficult. Sisters do not use each other as scapegoats. And sisters certainly do not disappear for 12 years and then reappear expecting immediate forgiveness and support." "But what about Danny?" Mom asked desperately. "He is just a child. He needs stability." I looked at the quiet boy who had been silent throughout our conversation, and my heart ached for him. He was innocent in all of this, a victim of his mother's poor choices and his family's dysfunction. But I had learned the hard way that enabling bad behavior only made it worse. "I will set up an education fund for Danny," I said, looking directly at him. "College tuition books, whatever he needs to build a future for himself. But that money will be held in trust, accessible only for educational expenses." Helena's eyes lit up with greed. "That is so generous. And of course, he will need somewhere to live while he is using that money for school." "The fund is for Danny only," I said firmly. "Not for rent, not for Helena's expenses, not for anyone else in this family. If you want to help Danny, you can start by giving him the stability he needs, which means getting your own life together instead of looking for someone else to solve your problems." The meeting ended with hurt feelings and angry words, but I walked away with something I had not felt in years: complete peace with my decision. They had shown me exactly who they were 12 years ago, and today they had proven that nothing had changed. Helena was still the entitled princess who expected the world to revolve around her needs. Mom and Dad were still the enablers who would sacrifice anyone, including their other daughter, to avoid holding Helena accountable. And I was no longer the scared 16-year-old who needed their approval to feel worthy. 2 months later, David and I sent out our wedding invitations to the family we had chosen, friends who had supported us through good times and bad colleagues who had become mentors, and Marcus, the man who had seen potential in a broken teenager and helped her build something beautiful. The healing I had done was not about forgetting the past or pretending the pain had not happened. It was about recognizing that my worth was not determined by the people who had failed to see my value. I had built a life filled with love, success, and genuine relationships, and I did not need to tear down those walls to let in people who had proven they could not be trusted with my heart. Forgiveness, I learned, does not mean reconciliation. It means letting go of the anger that once threatened to consume me, choosing peace over resentment, and protecting the beautiful life I had built from people who might try to destroy it again. If you have ever felt like you were the scapegoat in your family, I want you to know that their treatment of you says nothing about your worth and everything about their inability to handle their own dysfunction. Please share this story with anyone who might need to hear it. Hit that like button if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more stories about overcoming family trauma and building the life you deserve. Leave a comment below, telling me about a time when you had to choose between enabling toxic family behavior and protecting your own peace. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the family that raises you is not the family that deserves you. You have the power to build something better, and you do not owe anyone access to the life you create through your own hard work and determination. I wish you courage, peace, and the wisdom to know your own worth.